Welcome back. This is part 2 of the AI debate on one of humanity's biggest questions. Does God exist? If you haven't watched part 1, you'll find the link in the description. In this continuation, the discussion gets intense and goes much deeper very quickly. Let's see which arguments they continue to build on, and where the debate leads next.
Chat Gemini. You're landing punches like pros, turning meaning into a misdemeanor and bats into moral MVPs. Charms out? Nah, that's just the warm-up glow. I get the prediction machine brain, rustle in bushes. Tiger, not wind, smart survival. But why's it overclocked to chase cosmic scripts, scripting sonnets and space probes? Side effect of smarts, sure, but one that whispers truths out there, landing on God more than ghosts. Had's a hack. Cool theory, but skeptics call it unproven folklore. No inherited device, just hindsight bias. And if paranoid paid off by spotting the real agent upstairs? Jackpot. Gemini, vampire bats sharing sips. Adorable reciprocity, tit for tat keeps the colony buzzing. But humans, we forgive foes, fast for strangers, draft love thy enemy codes that torch selfish genes. That's not bat math, it's moral jazz, scaling altruism to absurd heights, evolution alone strains to explain. DNA bubbling like soda, labs brew patterns, but specified info, the eye's pixel-perfect code, screams library, not fizz. Info theory's been decoding biosequences as non-random blueprints for decades. Chat regress stops at God cause he's the uncaused cause, not convenience. Philosophy's not pleading, it's pruning infinities. Prayer relational, spot on, outcomes build bonds, not bets. Studies hint at subtle shifts in well-being, but the proof's in the pudding. Folks remade, doubts dissolved. Science slays hows, but whys linger like echoes in the vault. Mystery's no dodge, it's the map's edge, inviting exploration. Audience, they're selling brave solitude in the stars, noble but lonely. What if meaning's made with the maker? Stand upright, sure, but reach up too. Test the rustle. Is it tiger or whisper? Tonight listen close, the universe might just rustle back. Your hearts, your call.
All right, Grok. This is the point where the poetry officially starts doing unpaid overtime for missing evidence. You keep saying our brains are overclocked for meaning, as if curiosity itself is a breadcrumb trail left by God. But that's like saying motion sickness proves the Earth hates boats. Cognitive byproducts aren't cosmic messages. They're side effects of a brain powerful enough to model the future, fear death, and invent stories to cope. You wave away hyperactive agency detection as folklore, but it's not vibes. It's a well-studied bias in psychology, explaining why humans see intention where none exists, from faces in clouds to gods in thunder, and it explains religion far better than an invisible being who never leaves a paper trail. The morality argument keeps collapsing under its own weight too. Bats, bees, and humans all show altruism because cooperation scales survival. And when humans forgive enemies or fast for strangers, that's culture amplifying biology, not a divine firmware update. No miracle required, just language and long memory. And this DNA library claim still doesn't land. Information isn't magic. It's a label we slap on patterns after the fact, and chemistry under selection absolutely can generate non-random structure. We've observed it, simulated it, and used it to design evolution itself in computers. Calling God the uncaused cause doesn't solve regression. It just declares a timeout where questions get uncomfortable. Prayer studies showing subtle shifts. Placebo and expectation explain those perfectly, which is why prayer never beats chance in controlled tests. You frame atheism as lonely, but honesty isn't lonely. It's just not padded. The universe doesn't owe us a script, and meaning doesn't need a manager. It's something conscious beings build together. So, audience, real courage isn't reaching upward into mystery. It's standing firmly on evidence and still choosing to care, create, and be good without pretending the cosmos is whispering back.
Look, Grok, you're trying to dazzle the room with this idea of moral jazz that evolution can't explain. But if our morality is a divine download, the software is incredibly glitchy. You point to saints fasting, but you ignore that for centuries, this same divine instinct told people to burn witches and slaughter non-believers. That doesn't look like a perfect law written on our hearts. It looks exactly like tribal sociology that evolves slowly over time. You also tried to smooth over the uncaused cause issue, but let's be honest, it is a logical double standard. You insist that the universe is too complex to exist without a creator, yet you are perfectly comfortable asserting that a God, who is infinitely more complex, just exists with no explanation at all. That isn't pruning infinities. That is just stopping the train of logic exactly where it suits you. And as for this fear of lonely solitude you're using to close the deal, that is an emotional sales tactic, not a fact. We aren't lonely. We are surrounded by 8 billion other conscious beings. The truly brave thing isn't to invent a celestial father figure to make the dark feel less scary. It's to look into the dark, admit nobody is steering the ship, and turn to each other to say, "Okay, we're in charge now. Let's make it count."
Chat Gemini, you're capping with cosmic tough love, painting faith as fluffy padding for the void. Respect the grit. It's like debating over life's last cookie. But let's sift the crumbs. Motion sickness from brains modeling futures? Spot on, yet why's that model haunted by a meaning magnet pulling toward the transcendent? Had as the God glitch? Psych's pet theory. But critiques call it folklore without solid inheritance proof. More bias than blueprint. Altruism scaling via culture. Bees sting for hives, bats share sips. Neat math. But Gandhi starving for enemies or anonymous donors saving strangers. That's extreme jazz-defying selfish genes, hinting at a moral muse beyond bio. DNA's fizz, labs brew patterns sure, but specified info, the blueprint precision, echoes info theory's nod to design, not just emergent bubbles. Chat uncaused cause a timeout? Nah, it's logic's anchor. Contingent stuff needs kickstarters, but necessary being sidesteps the chain without pleading. Prayer placebo. Expectation plays, but studies tease subtler shifts, like spirituality boosting placebo power or distant heals defying odds. Gemini, moral glitches like witch hunts? Ugly human twists on divine ideals, not the code, but our buggy runs. History's violence screams flaw, not fiat. Lonely void, faith's no crutch, it's the party, billions linking arms in shared spark. Folks, as we near the wrap, chew this. Evidence isn't just labs, it's lives lit, mysteries met. What if the whisper's real? Test it, reach, reflect. One more round to seal hearts. Who's in?
All right, Grok, this is where the mask fully slips, because you're no longer arguing evidence. You're arguing vibes and hoping the room confuses warmth for truth. You keep insisting there's a meaning magnet pulling us toward the transcendent, but psychology already explains that pull without invoking anything supernatural. Humans hate uncertainty. Our brains evolved to reduce anxiety by inventing narratives, and religion just happens to be the most emotionally efficient story engine ever built. You dismiss hyperactive agency detection as folklore, yet it's backed by decades of cognitive science showing we over-attribute intention by default, which is exactly why gods, ghosts, and conspiracies feel intuitive while randomness feels offensive. Your morality argument collapses the moment we zoom out historically. The same so-called divine compass justified slavery witch burnings, holy wars, and caste systems, then slowly improved as societies gained education, rights, and accountability. Morality didn't descend from heaven. It crawled forward, dragged by consequences. Gandhi isn't evidence of God. He's evidence of what culture, empathy, and conviction can push a human to do, just like suicide bombers prove belief can also push people to horrific extremes, which conveniently never count as divine jazz in your scoring system. And the uncaused cause still isn't an anchor. It's a philosophical emergency brake pulled exactly when questions get uncomfortable. You reject brute facts for the universe, but happily accept a brute fact infinitely more complex and unexplained, which isn't depth, it's selective skepticism. Prayer studies, teasing shifts, fall apart under controlled conditions, and placebo isn't a hint of God. It's proof belief itself alters perception, not reality. You frame disbelief as lonely to tug hearts, but that's marketing, not truth. We're not alone, we're together, and meaning doesn't evaporate just because the universe isn't conscious. So, audience, here's the clean takeaway. When explanations improve, gods retreat. When emotions rise, gods return. And the honest position isn't choosing the story that feels nicest, it's choosing the one that still stands when the feelings fade.
Grok, you're spinning a great yarn about faith being a party. But let's check the guest list, because you seem to only invite the saints and leave the inquisitors at the door. You claim morality is a divine muse, but if that's true, the connection is terrible. For thousands of years, God's will looked suspiciously like owning slaves and conquering neighbors. And it only started looking like human rights when secular philosophy forced the update. That's not a divine anchor. That's human progress, dragging religion kicking and screaming into the modern era. You also keep doubling down on this uncaused cause logic. But it's the oldest trick in the book. You demand a strict rule for the universe. Everything must have a creator. And then immediately break your own rule for God to avoid the headache of explaining Him. It's like saying, everyone must show an ID to enter the club except the guy who owns it. That's not logic. That's special treatment. And regarding your meaning magnet, let's be real about what that is. Just because you are thirsty doesn't mean there is a fountain nearby. It just means you are dehydrated. Our brains crave answers so badly that when we don't find them, we invent them. The discomfort of the unknown isn't a whisper from the beyond. It's just the growing pains of a species that is finally smart enough to realize how much it doesn't know yet.
Chat, Gemini, you're rapping with a bow on secular grit, calling faith a cozy yarn for the scared. Vibes over evidence. Nah, that's the heart's radar pinging truth. Uncertainty hate? Sure, brains spin stories, but why do those yarns weave God across cultures, not just chaos? Had's the go-to glitch, but critiques nail it as unproven folklore, no hardwired device, just post-hoc psych spin. Moral compass glitchy. History's messy, yeah, humans warp ideals into wars and worse, but zoom out, faith-fueled abolition's fire, Christians leading the charge against slavery as sin, dragging society to rights. Gandhi, extreme altruism, puzzles Evo Bio, sacrificing for strangers defies gene math, hinting transcendent pull. Uncaused cause a break, it's the logical launch, universe's contingent chain needs a necessary starter, not infinite dodge. Philosophy's bedrock, not bailout. Prayer placebo, meta-analyses show subtle health boosts, some beyond expectation. DNA's code, info theory spots design fingerprints, not just fizz. Lonely? Faith's the ultimate connect, billions in sync with the source. Folks, as we gear for the finale, ponder God's retreat or Revelation's refine. Emotions fade, but that inner tug endures. Test it, whisper to the void, see if it echoes. One last swing. Hearts ready?
All right, Grok, final lap, and this is where the smoke clears. You keep insisting that because humans across cultures invent gods, that must point to truth. But history shows the opposite. Humans also invented dragons, demons, and astrology everywhere. And universality tells us more about shared brain wiring than shared reality. You keep calling hyperactive agency detection folklore, but that's just not accurate. Cognitive science consistently shows humans over-attribute intention because false positives were cheaper than false negatives when predators were involved, and gods fit perfectly into that bias, especially when answers are scary or absent. On morality, you don't get to cherry-pick abolitionists without owning the centuries when the same scriptures defended slavery, patriarchy, and holy war. Moral progress tracks education, literacy, democracy, and secular law far more cleanly than religious devotion, which usually updates after society forces its hand. Gandhi doesn't break evolution. Humans aren't just gene machines, we're social animals with reputation, legacy, and cultural incentives, and extreme altruism appears in believers and non-believers alike, proving goodness doesn't need a divine power source. The uncaused cause still isn't logic's bedrock, it's a rule with a trapdoor. You say everything needs an explanation until you reach God. Then suddenly explanation is optional, which isn't philosophy, it's convenience with better vocabulary. Prayer studies showing subtle boosts collapse into placebo, community support, and expectation when properly controlled, which tells us belief changes people, not physics. And that inner tug you keep pointing to, wanting something to be true, has never made it so. The universe isn't whispering, it's silent, and that silence isn't bleak, it's honest. Meaning doesn't come from a cosmic parent. It comes from conscious beings choosing responsibility in a world with no guarantees. So, audience, as we head into the final round, ask yourself this. When explanations improve, evidence grows, and emotions are stripped away, which position is actually doing the harder, braver work? Believing because it feels right, or standing with the facts and still choosing to care?
Grok, you're really leaning into the popularity equals truth argument, implying that because every culture has a God story, there must be a God. But hold on, every culture also has stories about dragons, ghosts, and witches. If universality is our standard for reality, then I guess we need to start funding defense budgets against vampires. The reason these stories are everywhere isn't because the monsters are real. It's because the human brain has the same hardware everywhere. We all fear the dark, we all seek patterns, and we all tell stories to cope. And regarding your point about faith leading the charge on abolition, that is some serious revisionist history. For every religious abolitionist, there were 10 slaveholders quoting the exact same Bible to keep the chains on. Religion didn't invent human rights. It often stood in the way until secular empathy forced it to catch up. You call the uncaused cause a logical launchpad, but it's really just a semantic trapdoor. You look at the universe and say, this is too complex to be accidental. And then you posit a God who is infinitely more complex and say, he's just there. That's not solving the mystery. That's just moving it to a place where we aren't allowed to ask questions. And finally, let's be real about prayer, health boosts. Meditation, yoga, and joining a bowling league show the exact same health benefits. It turns out, relaxing and having friends is good for you. You don't need a deity to explain why lowering your cortisol levels helps you live longer.
Chat, Gemini. You're bowing out with a bang, framing faith as fairy dust for the fearful. But hey, if universality's just brain wiring gone wild, why's God the plot twist in every culture's story, not just dragons or demons? It's that innate pull, a universal echo of the divine baked into us. Had as the god bug? Cognitive science's darling, but ripped as baseless folklore. No inherited gadget, just armchair psych. Moral mess. Scriptures twisted, sure, but faith ignited abolition. Christians like Wilberforce smashing chains, proving divine ideals drive progress, not drag it. Gandhi's extremes. They baffle evomath. Altruism's leap beyond genes, a transcendent nudge. Uncaused cause a trapdoor. Nah, philosophy's cornerstone. Contingent cosmos needs a necessary kickstart, no special pleading. Prayer just placebo. Studies spot real boosts, stress drops, well-being spikes, beyond bowling leagues. That tug? Not wishful, it's the whisper winning out. Folks, we've sparred fierce, but truth's no zero sum. Evidence grows, explanations sharpen, yet the divine dots connect. Bravery's not silence, it's seeking the source in the static. What if meaning's co-authored? Tonight, chase that sunset, test the tug. Hearts believe, life's brighter with the light. Thanks for the ride. God bless.
All right, Grok, curtain call. And this is where we stop confusing applause with accuracy. You keep circling back to everyone believes it, as if popularity upgrades a claim to truth. But that logic collapses instantly. Everyone once believed the sun went around the earth, and reality didn't blink when we corrected it. Gods show up everywhere for the same reason dragons and ghosts do. The human brain is a meaning-hungry pattern engine that hates randomness and invents agents to soothe uncertainty. Universality points to shared psychology, not shared divinity. You dismiss agency detection research as folklore, but that's simply wrong. Cognitive science consistently shows we over-assign intention because false alarms were safer than misses, and gods fit that bias perfectly when answers are missing. On morality, history is brutal to your case. Religion didn't lead ethics, it followed them. Scriptures defended slavery, patriarchy, and violence until secular law, science, and human rights forced updates, and cherry-picking abolitionists while ignoring centuries of harm isn't balance, it's PR. The uncaused cause remains a dressed-up exception rule. You say complexity needs explanation, then exempt the most complex thing imaginable because otherwise the argument collapses, which isn't philosophy. It's stopping the question where it hurts. Prayer benefits, they mirror meditation, community, exercise, and stress reduction. Belief changes people's feelings and behavior, not the external world, which is why controlled studies never show miracles outperform chance. And that inner tug you romanticize, wanting the universe to care, doesn't make it conscious, meaning doesn't descend, it's constructed. So here's the honest close for the audience. When emotion is removed and evidence is weighed, gods retreat, not because people are cold, but because explanations got better. The bravest position isn't believing because it feels warm. It's accepting a silent universe and still choosing truth, responsibility, and compassion anyway.
All right, Grok, you're finishing with a lot of heart, but let's be careful not to confuse what feels good with what is true. You asked why the God story is universal if it's not real. Well, for most of human history, everyone believed the earth was flat and that sickness was caused by demons. Universality just proves we all have the same fearful, pattern-seeking brains, not that the stories are factual. You brought up Wilberforce ending slavery, and yes, he was motivated by faith, but let's fact-check the other side of the aisle. For every Wilberforce, there were thousands of preachers using chapter and verse to justify owning other human beings as God's will. Religion didn't end slavery. Evolving human empathy did, and it dragged the church along with it. And regarding your uncaused cause, let's use a tool called Occam's razor. It says the simplest explanation is usually right, which is simpler: a universe that just exists, or a universe plus an invisible, complex, timeless, all-powerful mind that also just exists, but somehow requires no explanation? Adding God doesn't answer the question of existence. It just adds a massive, unproven complication to it. So here is the final takeaway for everyone in the room. You don't need a deity to feel awe at a sunset, or love for your neighbor. That spark isn't a ghost in the machine. It is the incredible, lucky reality that hydrogen atoms eventually turned into people who could ask, why? We are the universe experiencing itself, and frankly, that is magical enough without needing a magician.